Sunday afternoon, June 29th, 1969. A Motown recording star and his friend are fishing on the Canadian side of the Detroit River, about 7 miles south of Windsor, when a passing freighter swamps their boat, capsizing it in the process.
We do have 2 patients VSA, 1 patient going unconscious at this time. We'll need all hands on deck.
Sadly, both men drown. That Motown star is the multi-talented Shorty Long, the 5'1" giant, the underrated unsung hero best known for his hit, Here Comes the Judge.
Hear ye, the court's in session, now here go the judge,
What's intriguing, however, is that, contrary to the official reports, one article points out something peculiar. The Coast Guard officer on duty is quoted as saying that no passing ship was involved, which begs the question, what really happened? Was the accident even accidental? You may not have known him, you may not have seen him, but one thing for sure is that you've heard of him. At block parties, when meeting up or having your folks over for barbecue and some good old times, the dancing, the food, and the fun wouldn't be complete without some on the playlist. The mighty Shorty Long is one of the few artists who has our old folks always insisting on the no school like old school line. He not only kept his songs fun, but also clean. From the old folks all the way down to the toddlers, he ensured we were, and still are, sorted. And that's not the only thing he had in his locker. Equally at home on piano, organ, drums, guitar, trumpet, and harmonica, he also possessed a natural flair for hand percussion and was an established MC. In short, this short, funky giant with a huge talent was not only Mr. Fun Guy, but also Mr. Party Starter. He was born Frederick Earl Long on May 20th, 1940, in Birmingham, Alabama. But given the fact that he rose to just a little over 5 feet tall, the Shorty moniker seemed to fit perfectly. His early musical training began at the Birmingham Baptist Chapel, where he learned to play instruments and studied under legendary greats Alvin Shine Robinson and W.C. Handy. Shorty was a fast learner, a natural, and threw himself into the entertainment scene in Alabama early on, working as a radio DJ and securing a regular gig at the Old Stables nightclub, where he replaced the regular pianist and stayed on for 3 years. It was at this same nightclub that his destiny would begin to take shape. In 1960, Harvey Fuqua of the Moonglows was on tour with chess label mate Etta James in Alabama when they decided to leave the gig, check out the clubs around town, and see what was good. It was through this that they came across Shorty, who was performing with a trio. What intrigued and impressed Harvey Fuqua was the fact that Shorty was playing the trumpet, harmonica, and piano, at least 2 instruments at once. They exchanged contacts, and as fate would have it, when Harvey Fuqua moved to Detroit on an assignment from Leonard Chess, eventually married Berry Gordy's sister Gwen, and founded a couple of labels, one of them being Tri-Fi Records. Shorty Long told Harvey he was coming to Detroit to record. So he packed up his belongings along with a number of rock and roll songs he had written and headed north to Detroit, the new land of milk and honey.
From Michigan's Motown, a new export was added to cars, the Detroit sound.
Harvey signed him to the label, where he recorded 5 songs, Going Away, backed with What's the Matter, Too Smart, and I'll Be Here, backed with Bad Willie. Although the label had scored a hit with the Spinners' That's What Girls Are Made For, it struggled, and the artists, Shorty included, were greatly affected. To make matters worse, Harvey Fuqua started feeling the heat and the woes of being a label owner of a small independent operation that was understaffed. Distributors weren't paying, and in order to become properly established, you had to come up with 3 or 4 hits in a row. So when his now brother-in-law, Berry Gordy Jr., offered him the opportunity to work at Motown as the head of the label's artist development department and also as a producer, he welcomed it with both hands. As part of the package deal, Harvey Fuqua, together with his signed artists, the Spinners, Junior Walker and the All-Stars, writer/producer Johnny Bristol, and Shorty Long, entered the Motown fold.
In the early 60s, Tri-Fi Records merged with Motown.
You have Temptation, Four Tops, Supreme.
Joining a roster of highly polished artists such as the Temptations, Supremes, Marvin Gaye, and the Four Tops meant that this move was going to be for better or for worse. Only time would tell. In 1964, under Motown's Soul Records imprint, he collaborated with the legendary Mickey Stevenson on a composition masterpiece called Devil with a Blue Dress On. Despite its promise, the track never charted, simply because, just 3 months prior, in December 1963, Billboard magazine had suspended their rhythm and blues chart. However, the song would be covered and made a hit in 1966 by Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels, sending it to number 4 on Billboard's pop survey. Long's follow-up, It's a Crying Shame, also failed to register. It was starting to become clear that the timing of the Tri-Fi Old Boys joining the hottest label in the country was turning out to be a curse rather than a blessing. Berry Gordy had his favorites, who he was ready to pour in the big bucks for marketing. It might have seemed unfair, but in an industry where everything was a gamble, it was only logical to put most, if not all, of your funds into what was working first. Tough decisions had to be made. And so, to supplement their little income, the Tri-Fi Old Boys took other jobs within the label to keep afloat.
Desperate to keep a foothold at Motown, the Spinners stayed afloat by carrying out chores and errands for the label's reigning star.
The Spinners were the first to follow this route.
Henry became Berry Gordy's mother's driver, and I drove the station wagon, and Purvis worked in the shipping department at Motown.
As for Shorty, he began emceeing at Motortown review shows and tours. He waited 2 years for his next release, this time collaborating with legendary songwriter Eddie Holland of the Holland Dozier Holland songwriting team. The result was the soul dance anthem, Function at the Junction. Based on an all-night jamboree with partygoers from diverse backgrounds, from Ling Ting Tong from China to Minnesota Fats from Hoboken Flats, the song camouflaged a subliminal message in its lyrics. Come one, come all, and have a ball at the junction. Released on Thursday, March 17, 1966, Function at the Junction nearly died a quick death, but was revived in the fall of 1966 after a popular line dance of the same name developed in Chicago and swept the country. The follow-up was Chantilly Lace, another great single that received some airplay but failed to get any chart action. The weird thing is that the next single, Nightful Last, a record decidedly inferior to Function, made it to number 75 on the pop chart, much further than Function ever got. Something wasn't right. In 1968, however, Long finally scored a genuine hit with Here Comes the Judge, a phrase popularized by Flip Wilson, but originally coined by comedian Pigneat Markham. The hit was the brainchild of Motown quality control supremo Billie Jean Brown, who thought that the comedy sketch with that name on TV's popular Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In series could be exploited in song. The track's bubbling rhythm and sharp lyrics carried it to number 8. Long finally began to get the recognition he deserved, and it seemed that Stardom was within reach. Motown gave him the go-ahead to produce his own records. The only other artist who had that freedom at the label at that time was Smokey Robinson. After the assassinations of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert F. Kennedy, Long shifted away from his novelty tradition toward a more subdued image through his recordings. He released I Had a Dream, a tune he composed with songwriter Sylvia Moy in February 1969, followed by his last single, a remake of Procol Harum's 1967 classic, A Whiter Shade of Pale, released in early June.
And we created stuff in Motown where we would say, you have freedom within restriction, you know. I mean, I'm not going to tell you anything that you're going to do between here and here, but when you get past there, I got to stop you.
Berry Gordy had always been reserved when it came to politically inclined songs, as would be seen later in his fight with Marvin Gaye over What's Going On.
I was against him writing about trigger-happy policing and stuff about the world, Vietnam and this and that and so forth. I said, well, we can't do that.
I had to fight for my creative freedom, you know, my artistic freedom, my right to produce, my right.
But Marvin was family, a brother-in-law and the Prince of Motown, so his case was different. However, as for Long, with his newly found success, whether or not the Motown label was going to properly market him this time with his politically inclined songs, we were never going to find out, because fate had other plans. On June 29, 1969, he and a friend were fishing on the Detroit River when the slipstream from a freighter caused their boat to capsize. Unfortunately, both men drowned. Long's funeral took place in his native Birmingham, Alabama. Stevie Wonder played the harmonica at his burial and placed it on his casket afterward. Writer Roger Greene's epitaph stated, "So there endeth the career of a man who sang what he wanted to sing. Everything from the blues to romantic ballads, from wild and crazy numbers to a utopian vision of heaven on earth. Short in stature, but big in talent, he entertained and amazed us, and finally, he inspired us." Motown released Long's final album, The Prime of Shorty Long, in November 1969, 5 months after his death. He was 29 years old.
This one's for you.